yeah, hopefully I'll keep an eye on that, but hopefully it doesn't happen. So hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. We appreciate it. What we're going to do today is a little bit different than what we do in our normal webinars, our full webinars, and that is kind of focus a little bit deeper into the HR use case for FileHold. From what we can tell, HR is probably the second most common deployment we see here at FileHold. FileHold has been designed and it is so well suited for this sort of thing that we figured it'd be a good time to show you around a little bit. So what we'll do is we're going to loosely follow an outline, talk about some things that are pretty critical. I want to give, there are some people on the call that are not FileHold customers already, so I want to do just a very short kind of run through of everything. We're going to talk about security because of course that is paramount in an HR environment. We're going to talk about filing, getting documents in, and some automation opportunities that we might have. We're going to talk about, of course, search and retrieval. How do we get things in? How do we find them once they're here? We're going to go through workflow a little bit and kind of talk about how these documents can interact with not only people inside the organization, but maybe potential employees or external forces as well. We're going to talk about retention and disposition, making sure that if somebody is terminated or retires, that we're moving them out of the day-to-day into a separate area. And then some of the reporting capabilities that we have as well. So we really just want to spend some time focusing here. We have 45 minutes to do this, so it's possible we won't get to absolutely everything, but if you do have any questions, we are going to leave some time at the end for questions. And then also anybody who wants to set up a one-on-one call and talk about moving to HR or doing some of this, we're happy to do that together with you as well. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is log into FileHold, which I've done here. So we're in the desktop application. For those of you who haven't seen this, this is where you'll spend a lot of time in FileHold. You've got some parameters that most people will never touch. You've got a search bar that behaves a lot like Google, and you've got a library structure based on file cabinets. Now in this scenario, I've got a lot of file cabinets here. We've got engineering, government, police department, law enforcement, and HR. If we go into HR, we'll see some drawers. If we open up a drawer, you'll see some folders, and sooner or later, you'll end up with some level of file. And then from here, if you double click the file, it just opens up in the native application. Now, one of the most important things I mentioned is security. So in this environment, we do not want HR exposed to the rest of the organization, at least not to everyone. So it could be that you're an administrator or you've got a position of authority. So when you log in, you would see accounting and so on. But very often we want this siloed or partitioned away from log out of this and spend the rest of our time kind of going through just one aspect of FileHold. So we're going to log off. I've got me a little fake account here that I'm going to log into. Okay, we're going to authenticate me so I can see what I'm allowed to see. And very similar world, but what you'll see now is when I expand the library down, I've got one file cabinet to deal with, and that's it. If I go into a file cabinet, there'll be the drawers again. If I pull open a drawer, there are folders, and again, there's some level of file. Now, we set security 12 levels into FileHold. So what that means is that if you log in, and let's say that you have access to HR, and let's say you see all the employee personnel drawers, but if you open one up, there might only be one folder in here. But when you log in, you see 3 folders, and when HR logs in, they see 100. Same thing is true when you get inside of a folder. Here I've got access to 5 documents, but there might be 500 in here. I might have full rights to change the metadata and change the employee status if I wanted to, but if I go to the one below it, suddenly I'm restricted. I don't have an edit button. I can no longer delete this file. And so we're also setting individual security down at the file level itself. Now, some of those other nuances is you might be able to add folders into your own file, but not remove folders. So there's several roles that you can set up here to make sure that we're controlling what we want. But just remember, there's no way around this. If someone has a clever search term or they know something, they're not going to find it if they don't have rights at the document schema level. And we're going to get into schema here in a little bit. So it's very easy to browse. This makes sense. This feels like Windows Explorer. But if we click on search, and we just get a little bit fancier, and I'm going to type in the word employment. FileHold went through all the structure. It went through all the drawers, all the folders, and brought me back 6 results. If David had done the exact same results, he might have seen 1,000 documents. Now, sometimes the word employment is right in the file name, and we see that here at employment at will, but we don't see it here in this email. We don't necessarily see it here in this discrimination and harassment document or even in this I-9. So what's happening is it's searching through the library. It's also searching the file names. It's also searching the metadata or attributes you give the file, the version history, who owns it, who last touched it, is it part of a workflow, what's the file size. It's also searching every word of every page for the word employment, and it's also searching things like who the creator was. This was done in Microsoft Word version 16. It was created back in 2019, but then modified again back in 2021. All those data points are being searched as well. So kind of a recap, you've got the entire library structure, you've got the file names, you've got metadata, you've got the version history, content, and the system properties as well. It becomes very difficult, if not impossible, to misfile anything because we don't necessarily care now about where it lives or what it's named, although we're going to control both of those things pretty tightly. Now, we're going to come back to search a bit later and go deeper. We can get really specific. I want to see all employment documents for 2022 that Kevin worked on relating to new hires and COVID safety policy. I can get really, really specific, and we're going to come back and do this. But for now, I'm going to leave this behind and kind of show you how I got this far. How I got the metadata in, how we got the files put away, because there's a lot of opportunity here to speed this up or to make it easier on your HR administration. So we're going to go to an area called the inbox. And the inbox is just a big staging area of life of HR documents into the system. Now you could scan into here, you can drag and drop into here, but what I'm going to do is hit this plus sign and go out to all my HR documents that have come in. I'm just going to grab them all. And now they're in the queue. They are now here and ready to be dealt with. And so what you would do is you would double click a file. And as soon as you did that, a document would open up. So this is an individual retirement record. If you double click a different one, it'll be something entirely different. And you can see this is report withholdings and contributions for health benefits. But the idea here is that whatever these files are, whatever they need to be named as, you're going to have a corresponding drop-down list that has that document schema in it. So if this had been an I-9 and we selected that, it would be asking you for employee name, number, address, social, and date of birth. If we scroll down to something completely different, and I'm going to hit H so I can get down to something else. If it was an HR policy, now it wants employee name, social, policy type, effective date, status, and any notes that we have. You can type into here. We can reach into your HRIS system. So if you have ADP or you have Monday, there's a whole bunch of them that you can pull from. As long as we have access to the database level, we can grab that data. Now, it could be that if I already know Andy's name because it's in an HRIS system, as soon as I hit enter, it might already then know his social, employee status, notes, everything could be picked out for me. And then we also have a drop-down list of the kinds of policies we deal with. Is it an accident? Was it bereavement? Was it a leave of absence? And so on. So we can code it any way we want. But the main takeaway is that any of these document schemas are under your control, as is the appropriate metadata fields that we need to put this away. At any moment, if we can find a way to automate this through HRIS, we want to. That's not always possible, especially if they've locked you out of the database, the HRIS has locked you out. There are some things we can do, but we need to dig a little deeper into it. Okay, once the data has been filled in, then 4 things could happen. The first thing that could happen is, at least to me, maybe in HR you guys have memorized these numbers, but I wouldn't know what that was. Maybe the coding makes sense to my company, but I would rather know that this is a leave of absence form and then maybe then have that number. But the idea is that as soon as you hit save, it can rename the file into a meaningful, standardized naming convention. So that if I ever found that file on its own without search, I would know what it is before even looking at the metadata. The second thing it's going to do is clean up after itself. What we do not want is sensitive HR documents living on a file share out there where someone can say, you know, I'm just going to go around FileHold and go into the file share and get it. It now is under security, it's under audit trail, it's under control in FileHold, versioning kicks in. So we want that to happen. The third thing it could do is notify someone that it's here. I could be notified that, hey, we got your file, it's in the system now. And I could get an immediate notification or even up to a weekly summary of what's going on. And then the fourth thing it could do is start a workflow, saying we've got 30 days to do a background check or to check for another element that we might need. So a lot goes on once you apply this metadata, but this is the basic idea. You've got schemas and then you have the appropriate fields. And you'll notice I have a lot of strange stuff in here. I've got hazardous material questionnaires. You wouldn't see this in a normal system. You would only see things that relate to your organization. Okay, now in a similar way, we can also integrate with Microsoft Office. So let's say somebody emailed you a copy of their time card. There was a discrepancy. I could right-click that time card and save it directly into FileHold. What if this email correspondence was important to me and I wanted to capture all of it? I wanted to capture the words inside the email. I wanted the attachment as well. So instead of doing that, I might just grab the whole message and drag and drop it into the system, or I might hit a button. And if I go into the email and press this add button, it's going to extract the to, the from, the subject, the date, read all the words inside of the email, and then read the attachments as well. So what that ends up looking like in FileHold is that if you go and do a search, and you type in something for Kevin, if there is an email in there, and actually it's not in this system, it would be in my other one, it would pick all that up for us. Actually, let's go in and look at it so we can see. So let's say you were hunting correspondence for me. You type in Kevin, you find an email. It's going to have the metadata. It's going to have the file size, the location. It's going to have read all the syntax. Every time Kevin was mentioned, it's going to notice in yellow. And then it's also reading, this is the first attachment, and here are all the words within. Here's the second attachment with all the words and so on. So all that's been picked up. Very, very powerful. Now, you would put it in a normal room. You might put it in Kevin's correspondence folder, but even if you didn't, we would still find it. That's the power we're talking about with search here. You'll find those buttons in all of Office. So if I had a form, and oftentimes forms are PDFs, right? But let's just say we had something that wasn't, it was a Word document, you'll be able to save everything in Office that same way. So this is Office of Institutional Compliance and Risk Services for a medical inquiry. If I needed to save this into FileHold, I would just hit this add button. And just like before, a panel would open up. Let's see, it's locking me out of editing. So let's try that again. We're gonna hit add. And there we go. We would determine where in HR we want to put this, select our location, and then apply the appropriate metadata field to this document. So it's very easy to bring things from Office, Excel, Visio, OneNote, PowerPoint, all of that's possible. Now, in the case of a PDF file, another thing you could do is if you had your hands on this document, you could go to File and Print. And instead of printing it out to a PDF, which you could do, what we would do is send to FileHold. We would print it to FileHold. It would render the document and allow us to do exactly what we were doing before. It would pick it up. Let us, is this an appended version, maybe with a signature? Is it a new document that we want to bring in for the first time? And as soon as we made that decision, just like before, we would come over here and find what we're looking for. Let's get into H. Bear with me here. There we go. And then we would select what it is and where it needs to go. So very simple ways to bring files in. Of course, drag and drop is very simple. Now, in this case, this is a form. This has a last name, a first name, middle initial, employee ID. This is data that we could expect. We're not going to be bringing this in until this form has been dealt with. And that's important because you see it all the time where organizations will get something like this. They'll get it emailed to them. Somebody prints it out. Somebody then keys all the data and scans it back in. I know that seems a little bit over the top, but it happens all the time. So what we would do in that case is we would set up file to do what's called extraction rules. So here we have a whole mix of documents, and I'm going to go back to my HR example because I want to keep it clean here. So we're going to go to K. Smith. And now we're back just into the world of HR. When I go into this inbox where we brought these files in, you notice this entire column says set metadata, except for two of them. Two of them are saying that they know what this document is already. The rest still need some help. The reason that this one already knows what it is because if we look at the file and we scroll down to where the fun begins, somebody has already keyed this information in. We've got his last name, first name, address, social security, date of birth. It's a citizen. We can put the date. Just wanted to prove the example. But because I brought it into FileHold, you will see that the metadata has already been read off of the I-9. I've already picked it up. maybe the only field I want, and it could be default to active or terminated or inactive, whatever terminology you want to use, that could be default, or it could be something we select just to A, kind of prove that we went through it, and B, send it on its way. But the minute I hit save, that document is now going to be ready to go. We can map it to wherever we want it to go in the library. And in this case, it's Andy's file for an I-9, and that document's ready to go. So anytime that that's possible, if I can extract data off of the form, I want to. That would be a huge thing to be able to do. Another possibility is to do zonal OCR on paper records. So a lot of us still have paper personnel files. And what we would do is we would bring in any files that we wanted. Okay, and actually, let's just do that one, keep it simple. Okay, maybe not. Let's try a different one. What it's going to do is bring documents into the system, clean them up, remove artifacts, despeckle, deskew them, just try to make it look more attractive than it was. And then it's probably kind of hard to see, so I've zoomed in a bit. Every single word on this page, everything from the revision of the document to the name of the file, any fields that are in here have now been mapped, and it's looking for this data. So anytime you said, I want the department, their coding, the payroll, date, periods, anything at all that you want could be corresponding metadata in this panel right here. So the idea would be that I could come through and click on things and train this software to be able to read these fields for me so that when it sees a form like this again during scan time or even during import, it's going to read those data points for you, send them into FileHold, and make everything standardized and uniform like what we're seeing here. So all these tools play a role, but not always. If you're highly electronic already, then we're going to go on with the forms and kind of do it that way. Maybe you have a hybrid. We're going to be looking for those opportunities, and we'll help you with all of this. It's a collaborative thing that we do. Okay, now there are still other things that we can do to automate. So for example, in the world of HR, it's not like invoices where invoice numbers change and amounts change and so on, GL codes and so on. We know who Andy is. We know his name. We know his social security. So it stands to reason that we can automate certain folders for Andy. It's going to be hard to see, but there's a little A icon on this employment folder. If I go into that folder and I right click and go to properties, what you'll see is I've turned on an auto tagging rule. This rule already knows who Andy is. It knows his name, his social, the kind of document I'm expecting in this room, an effective date, potentially, the employee status, anything you want could be set up in here. It could be any document schema. So the idea might be is you would have a folder that has automation for each type of schema that you want. But since that rule has been established, what will happen now is that if I go out and I want to bring all these documents in this inbox, and I'm not going to get all of them, I'll just grab. Now let's assume these were all employment documents. I can drag and drop those into that automated folder. And now you'll see that they've all been flagged ready to send. You will also see that all the metadata is now finished. So we can entirely automate what you're putting in that person's folder, and that changes everything. And that only works because we know who Andy is, and we know his social, and we know that he's an active employee and what department he's in, and his hire date, and so on. So there's opportunity to automate at the folder level. There's also opportunity to automate it at the desktop level. Same idea. I'm going to create a folder, and we'll call it Andy. Nothing special about it, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask File to monitor Andy's local file. So we'll go to Andy's directory, and then I can map ahead of time into Andy's file. Okay, so now what I've done is I've preset what I'm expecting to happen. So when I hit save, that's all I have to do. If I go out and create some dummy documents, and we're just going to do this quickly. So let's say we had a whole bunch of scanned images, a driver's license, a background check, some PDFs, a contract. Could be a million documents. They're going to hit that folder, and in about 10 to 15 seconds, we're going to see them appear here. I'm going to delete this just so we can see it come in. In about 10 to 15 seconds, the service is going to run, start sniffing around. If it finds anything on that watch folder, at a minimum, it's going to bring it to this area, and then maybe somebody in HR is going to triage through it. So it gives you this opportunity of submission. Andy could maybe put documents in his own folder, and then they could be picked up and brought into FileHold automatically. And here they are. And all the metadata is done already. The destination's already been determined. We don't have to stop here and review them. We could have it automatically send to the location. I've just done that so you can see what's happening. But the idea is that all Andy had to do was put things in a folder he's been putting things into for 20 years, and FileHold will ingest them, bring them in, identify them, and potentially even start workflows, send out notifications, calendar entries, and so on. So a lot of opportunities. And by the way, everything I'm saying here doesn't just apply to HR. You could be using these tools for all disciplines in your organization. We're just happen to be talking about HR, but these tools are universal. Okay, so now the files are here. Let's kind of go back to search for a moment. When you go into the library and you browse, of course, that makes sense, and it's easy to find files that we want. We also know that if we type in search, and we did, I think, employment, try to spell it correctly, and we got results back. Now, one of the things it also does is it sorts by relevancy. So this one's 100% likely to be what I'm after. This job application mentions employment far less. It's only 10%. So depending on how often the word employment shows up, or even sometimes how long the document is, you'll see that number change a little bit. If you type in employment, though, you could set the system up to look for employment, but also employer or employee. You can be more forgiving. It can look for synonyms, misspelled words, fuzzy logic. I'm looking for employment within 10 words of work from home, or this, not this, or this and this. Synonyms, Boolean commands, all those are possible within FileHold. You can also do what's called an advanced search, where you'll have a list of all the document schemas that you have in the organization, along with all the attributes that are possible. So I needed I-9. It's January, I'm going to run an I-9 search. That'll give me every I-9 we've ever had as a company. And maybe that's what I want, but likely not. Maybe I want to refine a bit. So I would hit the plus sign and go a little further. And I would say, and I know the employee name. And so we could come in here and we could type in the name Andy. This is another place where this could be looking up into the HRIS system. So it might be that you type in the social and it automatically goes and pulls everything else in. Maybe we want to pull in the last name too. We have more than one Andy. Maybe not. So let's go ahead and do it. Hit the plus sign again. You want to drill down by social. Now at this point, I would have probably given up and said, I have enough information here, but maybe not. Maybe I want the date of birth. Maybe I want the city. Any of these fields are possible search terms in addition to keywords. So let's say you did that. I want to see all nines in the last year for Andy and 3 other employees that need to be renewed or looked at. You can save that search so that instead of doing this every single time you think of it, I'm going to come over here to my search area, click on public save search, and click on an I-9 search. And what that would do is build the template. It's now showed me all I-9s for this social security number that are both inactive or active. And I now have what I want. Not only could this be used for search, but it could also be used for reporting. One of the things you can do, and you'll notice it here, that these columns are completely customizable. So I've got first name, last name, employee status. Here's a list of all the ones I've built. If you click on one, you've got course view. We can see the employee name, their number, the course they went through, the date completed, expiration date, their status in computeries. You get to decide what these elements are, but it's also a reportable capability that you can use. You can also mix and match these ideas. So if I go into a folder, or let's do a search first, and type in, let's do policy. Well, I get a lot of policies here. I might get hundreds of them or thousands of them. In this case, I just got 4. But the idea is that if you had thousands of them and you said, well, I don't need all policies. I really just need policies for Andy. Then you can right-click and search his name and narrow down. Now you're only going to find policies as they pertain to Andy, and you can still come in and say, and I know the date it was created, or the date it was filed, or the date of birth, or the document date, or the expiration date, or the retirement date. Anything that's possible is just a thought away from building. You will also have URLs that you can put in other systems. So if I'm in an HRIS and I say, okay, I want to see all supporting documentation for Andy, I will be able to come in and click a link here, And that link will actually bring me to the supporting documentation for Andy. So I don't even have to really know what FileHold is. I could just be continuing on with ADP or something like that, click a link, and now I'm looking at supporting documentation. Now, another common thing is that I'm looking for Andy's file, and just in general. I'm currently in the policy and procedure area, but I'm on the phone with him, and he wants to know if he filed for his vacation for Hawaii. Now, you could browse over to leave, you could go over to vacation, or you could right-click his name and say, I want to see everything for Andy. And by clicking his name, suddenly you have everything we've got on Andy, everything. His employment at will, his leave forms, everything is now in front of you. You could grab them all up. You could zip them up into a zip file. You can merge them into one long continuous PDF. You could email them, and you could email them to Andy. But instead of sending sensitive information that may be HIPAA regulated, we're going to send links instead. Andy has to have a credential to open these, and now this is his entire personnel file in a URL form. Nothing is being uploaded to the internet. It's just a connection into FileHold where we have audit and security. Okay, if you match this button here, it'll merge the files together. This one is locked, so it won't let me, but you can merge them together. You could have emailed attachments, you could have downloaded them, you could export them out of the system, you could even archive them. So if I just found out that Andy retired, I could map everything to Andy and then archive his entire file where it would disappear from the day-to-day library and be moved down here into an archive mode. Then when you do a search for something, you'll have to purposefully say, I would like to look in the archive. So if I type in Andy now, and I say, you know what, this is everything that's current, show me everything that's in the archive too. Maybe he left and came back. You'll have that capability as well. Also, when you're doing a search, you're going to be able to highlight things like the keyword and why that keyword came back. So I'm going to type in employment again. And I'm going to grab this document here. It's a job application. We already know that if we hit highlight results, we can see here in yellow every time. And that's really useful, especially at a glance, because you can see this is what's going on. But imagine doing this over on a 300-page document. So instead of doing that, if you press this button down here, we'll open it up in FileHold's viewer. And what this allows us to do is maybe add or remove pages, sticky notes, highlighting tools, and so on, which I'll show you. But it's also giving me content or context around the word employment. So there are 4 matches. Here's one on page 1, or there's several on page 2. If it was page 90, we'd be able to click on one of these boxes, and it would take us right down to page 90 where that information was mentioned. So if we needed all of this, we could copy and paste it. There's a built-in little copy and paste button. So if I said, that's the question I want to add to my new onboarding list, I could press this button here and take that language out of the file. So I really like this. It's useful. It's sort of a search within a search, if you will, and it gives you some bookmarks to jump to. Now, what if I wanted to put something out, but there was sensitive information here? One of the things we've added to this viewer is a redaction capability. So let's see if I can find something that would be good. Maybe this paragraph is sensitive for whatever reason. I can highlight it, and then I hit this button here. And I can redact that sensitive information and publish a document that you can no longer see this paragraph at all. You'll see a black box. Not only is it stripping out what I can visually see, it's also stripping out the actual words underneath it. So if someone does a search for the word pertinent, even though it's here, it's not going to come back because it's actually been stripped out of the data in addition to visual. So you'll still see it. You'll still find it if that's the way you want to do it. But when I go in, I'm only going to find the published redacted version that was put into FileHold. Really, really powerful feature for sensitive information. Okay, we're always running out of time on these things. Let's talk about a few more things that we can do. If you're working on something like you have constant forums, if you click a star next to something, we'll put it in a favorite section so you have quick access to any boilerplate information that you're using all the time. If you wanted to, you could send this into a workflow. And I think I want to use the I9 for this. So if I wanted to send this document out to somebody, I could have an ad hoc workflow that I'm asking one of my colleagues to review this or to do a follow-up task. By pressing that button, what it would do is allow me to define anything I want, what I want you to do. It may be something I just thought of and I'll never do it again. It's just an ad hoc workflow. You know, hey, can you take a look at this? I had some questions. Or, hey, you've got 7 days to look at this. Or, here's my entire HR team. I need one of you to take on this project. Could you? I want the following people to watch it. But the main idea is that you can control these. Or you might have something that you do all the time. It's a lockdown process where you tell everyone that they need to indicate that they've read and understood the new changes. I can send this out to the entire staff all at once, and it doesn't even have to be in sequence. They can decide at will what they want to do. So once you kick off some kind of journey, it would email out calendar entries, it would send email notifications, and then in dark black, it would tell you that you have new things to do. You would see what's been asked of you. You could hit show documents. Of course, you would look at the file. That will be audited as well. And then you can sign off on it. Yeah, this looks fine. I'll stop parking in the front row. You could put, yes, this is good. Here's my comments. We need more parking. And here's a photo of my car way out in the middle of nowhere. And here is my password that verifies I'm authorized to say that I've done this. And then managers will be able to come into a dashboard and break things down and see what's gone on. We can see who has signed off on it, who hasn't yet, but a full report of kind of what's happening to that workflow. If somebody calls in sick, if Tom leaves the company, I can delegate to someone else. It gives us control to be able to see how far along things are at any given moment. We can also see things like how busy we are. If we go under the hood, we can go into a status report and see, you know, what's Kevin working on right now, or what am I still waiting for from Andy? Well, I still need his HR policy sign-offs and a couple other things. Also, I can see how productive we've been as a whole. I've got 3 policy sign-offs out there. I've got a couple training documents. I've got purchase invoices and so on. We can kind of see what's happening globally across the system. I have a full audit trail of any behavior that's possible. So looking at a file, printing a file, adding something in, anything at all, even viewing a document could be picked up here. And we can look and see. The last thing we did was we looked at a job application at 1:31 Pacific time, or standard or central time. You can export this out as a report if you like. This cannot be edited by anyone. It's all locked down and under control. If you ever change your mind and decide you want to add a new metadata field, or you want to create a retention or disposition policy, you'll have complete control to change anything in FileHold. You can come in and add a field, and not only add it to files going forward, but go back and retroactively add that field to others. You can set up your own custom naming. The file can create folders for itself based on file names. We can do events, so we could say we keep onboarding packets for 2 years, then they go to archive for 100 years, and then they're deleted. That can all be automated as well. Lots of capabilities, but the main takeaway I wanted you to see here is that you will have complete autonomy over this. You will not have to call FileHold every time you want to add a schema or do something. Once you've gone through training, it's very intuitive how to deal with it. And I know some of you have done this already many, many times. Okay, we've got just a few more minutes, and again, I apologize. It's a lot to cover in 45 minutes. One of the other things that I forgot to mention is cloning structure. So we have talked about security, but if you notice here with Andy, I've got civil service commission, I-9s, investments, policy, medical, and so on. So I just hired someone new. Now, I don't want to sit there and right-click and add new folders every time I hire someone new. So what I would do is, instead of having to do this manually, I would right-click and say clone structure, and I would put in David Knight. And then I would map to where I want to put it. What happens now is all of that nuance, or all that substructure for David Knight, is now in this queue. So we're able to clone structure, and this, I can't stress enough how much time this saves. We even have customers that are not using this, and they could be. It really speeds things up in terms of folder creation. Once you've decided on a format and standard, this can go a long way. Now, you can have nuances, and you can add new folders to this that are unique to David, but it really is handy to get everything to be uniform and only really have to build it one time. Okay. Another thing that I think I forgot to mention is I did show you the link feature. And the link feature, when I go to someone's name, if I want to find Andy's complete file, I can right-click and I can say link by value. I can link by schema, not by schema, so just his name, and bring everything together. But also, we have a linking feature just on its own. So if I ever find one document, let's go and do a basic search. I get Andy, and as soon as I do that, I find this offer letter. Now, the offer letter is what I've decided is kind of the most important thing here. This is kind of the center. It may not be true, but let's just say for this argument that this is the offer letter and all documents are related to that offer letter. So rather than go hunt through the files and look for everything, I can press this number 9. As soon as I do that, everything is together in one single click. So this is the parent, and these are the children files of that parent, but these children have families of their own as well, and they may relate to other things. So what it does is it allows you to get to an entire personnel. Things live in different folders with a right click, and that search button, it gives you another option. Another thing that I want to mention is that similar to workflow, if I want to route something inside of the organization, I can do that through one of these workflows, and you can have several of these. But there's also a courier option. This person doesn't know what FileHold is yet. They don't even work here yet. So I'm going to initiate a sign-off that's going to send this outside of the organization to someone who does not know what FileHold is. I'm going to hit external. I'm going to put in their email address that we have for them. Please review this onboarding packet and let me know. We're also going to not allow them to print it or stop them from downloading, or they have to have a password to open it. It's going to expire in a week. It's going to notify them every day or even every hour. So that person is going to get an email notification, and they're going to have a URL to click on, which will actually open up FileHold in its courier form. It's going to have your logo up here at the top if you want. I'll give this a second for Chrome to load it. The buttons will appear after they've looked at the file. They can get a copy or view it, but as soon as they view whatever file you sent them, you now have an audit trail of what's going on. They'll now see an approval button where they can connect it and say, yeah, this looks fine, I accept, and off they go. Now, this is just one beginning of this. We also integrate with DocuSign and Adobe Sign. So it could be that we send DocuSign or Adobe Sign notifications outside of FileHold through a workflow that prompts them for signature, amalgamates all the documents and brings them home, signed and executed. We also have a forms portal, which is a whole separate thing. We actually just did a seminar on that. And what that lets us do is submit forms outside of the organization, again, to people that don't have FileHold, where somebody could go in and register their name and account and then have a drop-down list of all the forms we need for employment, fill them out in their own home, and then submit them to you. They would come into FileHold, start workflows and notifications right away. So lots of power here. There's lots of power. If you're already using this for your HR department, maybe you saw some things today that you didn't know, or if you're thinking about rolling out to HR, this could be helpful. We're willing to help you. So if you have any questions or want to dig deeper into your use case, we can help you. We also can go through a best practices guidance to kind of tell you what some of the other organizations have done. There's a lot of resources here and a lot of tools to back those up.